The snow had started to fall just before sundown, drifting quietly through the still December air. On the corner of Pine Street, a 12-year-old girl stood alone, her breath rising in small white clouds. Her name was Emily Carter, and she was about to do something that no one had ever taught her how to do: ask for help. She reached into her backpack, pulled out a torn piece of notebook paper, and with fingers trembling from both fear and cold, she wrote a note. Just a few lines. A last try. She folded it, tucked it gently beneath the gas cap of a Harley-Davidson parked outside a biker clubhouse, and took one step back. People had always warned her to stay away from places like this. But sometimes, when the people you're supposed to trust are the ones who make you feel the most unsafe, strangers become your last hope. What Emily didn't know yet was that this moment, this note, would become the beginning of something she'd never had before: a place to belong. Just 6 weeks earlier, Emily had been sitting in the back seat of a state-issued sedan, her life packed into one suitcase and a Ziploc bag of documents. Linda Brooks, the social worker, gave her the kind of practiced smile that kids in the system learn to see through pretty quickly. "You're going to be just fine, sweetie. Jack is family, and that makes all the difference." Emily didn't respond. She just stared out the window, holding tight to the photograph of her mother, the only piece of her old life she couldn't leave behind. In the picture, her mother was laughing, eyes closed, hair blowing in the wind, before the illness had taken everything, before the hospital rooms and the silence, before foster care. Jack Thompson lived in a quiet neighborhood where the mailboxes matched and the lawns were neat. His house, number 42, had a clean walkway and navy blue shutters. When he opened the door, he looked exactly how you'd expect a construction worker in his late 50s to look: tall, weathered, hair pulled back in a ponytail. He wore a flannel shirt tucked into worn jeans. His handshake was firm, his nod to Emily brief but not unkind.
"Your room's upstairs, second door on the left," he said after Linda left, her taillights disappearing into the evening. The room was small but clean. A twin bed, blue comforter, desk under the window, and an empty bookshelf. Emily unpacked slowly, setting her mother's photo on the nightstand and adjusting it until it felt just right. That first night, dinner was spaghetti from a jar. Jack didn't ask questions about school or friends or how she was feeling. He ate in silence, washed the dishes, and told her bedtime was 9 o'clock. Emily lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of a house that wasn't hers, pipes ticking, the hum of the furnace, Jack's footsteps pacing below. But even with all that unfamiliar noise, it still felt safer than the hospital nights had, at least for a while. The first few weeks passed quietly. Jack drove her to school every morning at exactly 7:30, picked her up at 3:15 without fail. He cooked dinner like it was a job: meatloaf on Mondays, frozen pizza on Fridays. He didn't talk much, he didn't shout, he didn't ask her to call him Dad. They existed in parallel routines, orbiting around each other like planets that would never collide. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't dangerous either, and after everything Emily had been through, that seemed like enough. But as November faded into December, something began to shift. One afternoon, as Emily walked home from the bus stop, she saw the house across the street lit up with Christmas decorations, twinkling lights, a wreath on the door, holiday music playing through the open window. She glanced toward Jack's porch. He was standing there, keys dangling in his hand, staring at the lights like they were something terrible. Not angry exactly, more like haunted, like the decorations reminded him of a wound he'd never let anyone bandage. He didn't say a word, just turned the key in the lock and disappeared inside. That night, Emily heard him pacing downstairs, back and forth, for hours. Something in the house had shifted. The air felt heavier, the silence more fragile. And though Jack hadn't raised his voice, hadn't broken a single rule,
Emily started to understand that sometimes fear doesn't need a loud voice to be heard.
By the second week of December, the quiet tension in Jack's house had hardened into something sharper. Emily began to notice small changes, the way his eyes stayed bloodshot longer, the way unopened mail piled up on the kitchen counter, how he stopped answering phone calls altogether. There was one morning when she walked in and saw a half-empty whiskey bottle sitting beside his coffee mug, the cap left off like he didn't care anymore who noticed. He didn't say much that day, just muttered something about leftover chicken in the fridge, and went back to staring out the window, lost in thoughts she could never quite read. The neighborhood, meanwhile, transformed around them. Strings of lights blinked from rooftops, plastic reindeer appeared on lawns, Christmas music spilled from radios and windows like a joyful flood, and with every new decoration that went up, Jack seemed to fold in on himself. He circled a date on the kitchen calendar, December 23rd, over and over again until the paper tore. Emily didn't know what that date meant, but she could feel the storm building toward it. One evening, a group of carolers knocked on the front door. Their voices, full of cheer, filled the porch with joy to the world. Jack threw the door open so fast that one of the teenagers took a step back in alarm. "Get off my porch," he snapped, his voice low and ragged. "Take your singing somewhere else." No one said a word. They just left. Jack slammed the door and locked it with shaking hands. Emily had been watching from the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. 2 nights later, she woke to the sound of something breaking. She crept downstairs to find Jack in the kitchen, staring at a shattered coffee mug on the floor. Blood dripped from a cut across his palm. He stood over the sink, watching it mix with the water like it was happening to someone else. "You're bleeding," she said softly. "I know," he replied, voice flat. "Go to bed, Emily." She wanted to ask him why he was like this, why Christmas made everything fall apart, but she didn't. She just climbed the stairs in silence, leaving him behind in a room that had once felt quiet, but now only felt hollow. From that night on, she started sleeping with her backpack beside her bed. She packed it quietly each morning and unpacked it at night, pretending it was just a routine. But deep down, she knew. She was getting ready, just in case. On the afternoon of December 20th, the music started again, this time from next door. Mr. Rivera was testing out a new speaker system with old holiday tunes. Bing Crosby's White Christmas played loud enough to rattle the windows. Jack's reaction was immediate. He pounded on the shared wall with his fist, shouting words Emily couldn't understand. Then he stormed out of the house, confronting Mr. Rivera in the driveway with clenched fists and wild eyes. Emily watched from behind the curtains as Mr. Rivera tried to calm him down. Eventually, the music stopped, but the damage was done. When Jack returned, something in his expression made Emily step back without thinking. "What?" he barked. "Nothing," she whispered. "Then stop looking at me like that." He shoved past her and disappeared into his room. The door slammed, the lock clicked, and the house fell into silence again. That night, as she lay staring at the ceiling, Emily realized she couldn't wait for something to happen. She had to leave before it did. So she got up, quietly pulled on her sneakers, grabbed her backpack, and slipped out the back door, the one she had tested a dozen times before to make sure it wouldn't squeak. The cold air hit her like a slap. Snow was falling again, covering everything in soft white. Her breath came in gasps as she ran past glowing houses and holiday blow-ups. Her thin jacket did little to fight off the December air, but she didn't stop. 2 blocks down, she saw it, the old motorcycle clubhouse she passed every week on the way to school, the place people always warned her about. But something about that row of bikes lined up outside felt like stability, like strength. She spotted a black Harley, one she recognized, with worn leather and a gas cap that always sat slightly off-center.
Emily dug into her backpack and pulled out her school notebook. She tore out a page and pressed it against her leg to write. "My foster dad hates Christmas. I don't feel safe.
I'm 12. I have nowhere to go. Please help." Her handwriting was shaky, nearly unreadable. She folded the paper and tucked it under the gas cap, hands numb from the cold. The only place she could think to go was the diner on Main Street. It was open 24 hours. She walked in and found a booth in the back. The woman behind the counter asked if she was okay. Emily nodded and ordered a hot chocolate with the crumpled $5 bill she had hidden in her backpack. When the mug came, she wrapped both hands around it, trying to stop the shaking. Snow piled up outside the window. She didn't know what would happen next, only that she had made a choice. She had asked for help. The sky had only just begun to lighten when Mike Harris stepped outside the Redemption Riders clubhouse, coffee mug in one hand, helmet in the other. The snow had slowed overnight, leaving a soft layer across the parking lot. His breath formed clouds as he walked toward his Harley. He'd ridden that bike for over 15 years, knew every scratch, every quirk, every time the gas cap sat a little loose. So when he reached down and found it tilted just slightly, his brow furrowed. He opened it and a small folded paper slipped into his palm. At first he thought it might have been someone messing around, but then he saw the handwriting, wobbly, desperate. He unfolded it slowly and read the words. "My foster dad hates Christmas. I don't feel safe. I'm 12. I have nowhere to go. Please help." No name, just a single word at the bottom, written in shaky pencil. Emily. Mike read the note again, this time slower. Then he turned, walked back toward the clubhouse, and pushed through the door with urgency in his step. The other members, still shaking off sleep, looked up.
Sam Walker, the club's bookkeeper in the heart of the place, stood near the coffee pot. "What's wrong?" she asked. Mike didn't say a word. He just laid the note on the scarred wooden table where they usually played cards and argued about engines. One by one, the others gathered around. No one spoke at first. The silence felt heavier than usual. Finally, Sam said softly, "That's a kid. That's someone's little girl reaching out to us." One of the newer members muttered, "Could be a prank," but even he didn't believe it. Mike looked at all of them. "Whether it's real or not, we're going to find out, because if that was your daughter, your niece, your kid neighbor, you'd want someone to care enough to check." Within 20 minutes, they had a plan. The clubhouse split into small teams and fanned out through the neighborhood. Mike, riding solo, took the west end of town. He knew the streets, the alleyways, the quiet corners where a scared kid might hide. The others checked parks, porches, anywhere with lights still on from the night before. It was Tiny, ironically named since he stood over 6'5" and weighed more than a kitchen fridge, who spotted her first. She was slumped in a diner booth, bundled in a jacket too thin for December, a half-empty mug of hot chocolate in front of her. Her head leaned against the window, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Tiny called it in. Mike told him, "Don't crowd her, I'm going in alone." He left his helmet on the seat, took a deep breath, and stepped through the diner's glass door. The bell chimed overhead. The woman behind the counter, Nancy, gave him a quick nod, recognizing him from the neighborhood. Mike walked slowly toward the booth and eased into the seat across from the girl. "Emily," he said gently. Her eyes widened, startled but not panicked. She didn't run, just stared at him with guarded hope. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out the folded note. "You left this on my bite." Her voice trembled. "I didn't know where else to go." "You did the right thing," he said. "We're not going to let anything happen to you. But we need to get you somewhere warm, safe, and quiet. That okay with you?" Emily nodded slowly, and Mike saw it in her eyes. The moment she decided to trust him. Not because she wanted to, because she had run out of options. Back at the clubhouse, Sam met them at the door with a blanket already in her hands. She wrapped it around Emily's shoulders and guided her to the long wooden table. Someone flipped on the heater. The place smelled like coffee, pine cleaner, and faint traces of motor oil. A few of the bikers offered shy waves. No one asked questions. Sam made pancakes, fluffy, buttery, stacked with syrup.
and Emily sat quietly, eating as though she didn't want the moment to end. Mike sat nearby, sipping his coffee. "Social services is on their way," he told her. "They'll ask you some questions, make sure you're safe. But until then, you're staying here. You're not alone anymore, okay?" Emily didn't answer right away, just looked down at her plate, syrup on her chin, and nodded. Something loosened in her chest, a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. She bit her lip hard, blinked fast. She wasn't ready to cry in front of these people, but for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, she believed someone when they said she'd be safe. Over the next few days, the redemption riders adjusted to having Emily around the clubhouse. She didn't say much, but she helped Sam wash dishes and fold blankets. She watched the men repair bikes in the garage and listened quietly as they told stories that danced between laughter and long silences. It wasn't exactly normal, but it was something that felt steady. One afternoon, while tying ribbon around a box of donated toys, Emily spoke without looking up. "He circled the 23rd on the calendar, over and over. The paper tore." Sam paused, glancing at Mike, who leaned back in his chair, processing the words. Emily's voice was soft. "He used to be quiet, sad but steady. Then Christmas came and he changed." Mike nodded slowly. "Some folks carry weight the holidays make heavier."
They started asking questions, not to Emily, but to people who might know Jack's story. It took a few calls, a few awkward silences. Eventually, someone talked, an old drinking buddy from years back, a man who remembered just enough to paint a picture. And what they learned made everything fall into place. Jack had been just 7 years old when it happened. Christmas Eve, a fight between his parents, a slammed door, an engine starting, then silence. His father never came back. No explanation, no closure, just a table set for 3, a blinking string of lights, and a turkey that went cold while a boy waited by the window. The police found the car in a ditch 2 days later. His mother never spoke of it again. The years passed, but the memory didn't. Jack buried it, layer by layer, and every December it came back up. The songs, the lights, the cheer, they didn't comfort him, they haunted him. Mike sat with that for a while. He didn't excuse what Jack had become, but he understood where it came from. Pain, left alone long enough, doesn't just fade, it festers. And when no one helps you carry it, you start dropping it on people who don't deserve it. He made the first visit 2 days before Christmas. Jack didn't answer the door. The second time, he knocked longer. Still nothing. So the third time, Mike didn't knock. He just slid a folded flyer through the screen. Details about the riders' annual toy run. A simple note scrawled in pen. "You don't have to be alone with this. Come watch." On the day of the toy run, the town streets filled with the rumble of engines and the sound of children laughing. Bikes were decorated with garlands and ribbons. Riders waved at families lining the sidewalks. There was no loud music, no artificial cheer, just something real, something kind. Jack stood at the edge of it all, hands in his coat pockets, eyes shaded behind sunglasses. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just watched for a long time, and something in his chest cracked open. Not all the way, not enough to fix anything, but enough to let the light in. That evening, the clubhouse felt different. The noise had softened. The fire pit out back crackled gently, sending sparks into the cold night air. A few strings of warm white lights hung loosely along the garage wall, not flashing, not loud, just enough to push back the dark. Emily sat at the long table with Sam, rolling ribbon and taping bows onto wrapped toys. Her movements were careful, focused. She liked that her hands were busy. It kept her thoughts from racing. She looked up when the door opened. Jack stood at the edge of the lot, shoulders tense, like he might turn around at any second. No one rushed him. No one stared. Sam simply poured another mug of cocoa and held it out without a word. Jack took it with shaking hands and sat near the fire, eyes fixed on the flames. He did not speak, and no one asked him to. After a while, Emily stood and walked toward him, holding something small she had made earlier from construction paper and markers. It was a tiny motorcycle ornament, uneven and bright. She stopped a few steps away. "I made this," she said quietly, "for the tree." Jack looked at it like it might disappear if he blinked. His voice broke when he answered, "Thank you." It was the first real word he had spoken all night. There was no sudden miracle, no perfect apology, but something had shifted. Jack stayed. He listened, and for the first time in years, he did not leave when the night grew quiet. In the days that followed, things moved slowly. Social services continued their work. Emily did not return to Jack's house, not yet, maybe not ever. She stayed temporarily with Sam under official supervision, sleeping on a couch that smelled like clean laundry and safety. Jack agreed to counseling. Appointments were scheduled. Boundaries were set. Nothing was rushed. Healing, everyone agreed, was not something you forced. It was something you allowed.
Emily joined the riders during the toy run, sitting bundled up in the back of a truck, waving at children as presents were handed out. She laughed when the engines roared. It was the first time in a long while she felt part of something bigger than fear. She learned that these men and women with rough hands and weathered faces showed up every year, not because they had to, but because they chose to, and that choice mattered. Jack came to watch again. This time he stayed longer. He did not smile much, but he stayed. He spoke to Mike quietly afterward, about the calendar, about the nights he waited for a car that never came back, about how the songs made him feel like that 7-year-old boy all over again. Mike listened. He did not try to fix it. He just stayed. Emily and Jack did not become a story with a perfect ending. They became something more honest, a beginning, one built on truth, distance, and care. Emily learned that asking for help was not weakness. Jack learned that pain carried alone only grows heavier. And the riders proved what they had always known. Family is not always about blood. Sometimes it is about who shows up when you are at your lowest and says you do not have to carry this by yourself. So here's the question. If you found that note on your motorcycle, what would you do? Would you look away, or would you choose to care? If this story moved you, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in second chances and the power of chosen family, consider subscribing for more stories about hope, healing, and the quiet strength of human connection.